This is HOA meltdown moments. She threatened a hearing over slush. My phone buzzed with an HOA violation email, and Virginia screamed from the sidewalk that she had just submitted the evidence and the fine clock had started unless I complied immediately. "I do not want your story. I want your shovel," she yelled, her face red under the hood of her purple wool coat. I stood on my front step in Pearland, Texas, holding my phone with the email still loading, snow flurries swirling between us. The Icefall Landing HOA board had sent the notice at 7 in the morning, and Virginia Turner was already at my curb with a whistle around her neck and an orange reflective marker planted in the slush like a traffic cone. She blew the whistle twice, sharp blasts that cut through the wind. "You have until noon to clear your driveway approach and the public sidewalk segment, or the fine increases to $200 per day," she said, stepping closer. I work pest control, long irregular hours with service call logs that run into the night, and I had been up until 3 dealing with a rodent emergency at a warehouse. The snow had started falling around 4, and I had crashed for maybe 2 hours before her whistle woke me. Virginia raised her phone and aimed it at me. "Smile, I am documenting this for the file," she said. She took 3 photos, turning slightly to get different angles of my unshoveled driveway and the thin layer of snow on the public sidewalk. "I have your vehicle plate, your door number, and a timestamp," she continued. "The board voted last night to implement emergency winter enforcement, and you are the first case." I glanced past her at the street. Every other driveway on the block had the same light covering of snow. Nobody else had shoveled yet because the storm was still going and the sun was barely up. I pointed that out, keeping my voice level. "She is targeting you because you have a custody schedule and guests, and she knows it," I thought, remembering the last 6 months of petty complaints whenever my ex dropped our daughter off for the weekend. Virginia smiled. "Keep arguing. You are making my case for me," she said, tapping her phone screen. I stepped back inside and grabbed my shovel from the garage. The snow was maybe 2 inches deep, wet and heavy, already turning to slush under the warmer Texas air. I cleared the driveway approach in about 15 minutes, scraping down to the concrete and tossing the slush into the yard. Virginia stood on the sidewalk the entire time, recording with her phone. When I moved to the public sidewalk segment in front of my house, she held up a hand. "You need to clear the full 40 feet of frontage," she said. "That is the rule." I checked the email again. It said driveway approach and assigned sidewalk segment, no footage specified. I told her I was clearing what the email said. She shook her head. "The rule is 40 feet per lot," Na said. "If you do not comply, I am adding a separate violation for incomplete remediation." I finished the segment and went back inside. My daughter was supposed to arrive at noon for the weekend, and I could not afford another gate lockout. The neighborhood gate at Icefall Landing froze twice last winter, trapping residents outside for hours while the management company tried to get a tech out. I had a key fob that worked intermittently in cold weather, and I did not want to risk her waiting in the car if the system glitched again. I made coffee and checked the HOA portal on my laptop. The emergency winter enforcement policy had been posted at 11 the night before, a single PDF with no discussion thread. I downloaded it and read through. The policy claimed authority under the covenants to impose immediate fines for snow and ice hazards, with escalating penalties and lien authority after 72 hours. It listed Virginia Turner as the record's custodian and enforcement contact. I called my buddy Marcus, a city code enforcement officer who had helped me before when the HOA tried to fine me for a work truck parked in my driveway. He answered on the second ring. "Marcus, I need a reality check," I said. I explained the shoveling demand and the emergency policy. He laughed. "Pearland does not have a snow removal ordinance," he said. "We get maybe 1 or 2 storms a decade. The city does not even own plows. If the HOA wants to ask residents to shovel for safety, fine, but they cannot fine you for failing to clear public sidewalk. That is city right of way." I asked if the HOA could enforce a private rule for the driveway approach. He paused. Maybe, if the covenants are specific, but they would need to prove you created a hazard, he said. And fines that escalate that fast sound like a cash grab. Get everything in writing and call me if they try to lien you. I thanked him and hung up. My phone buzzed again. Another email from the HOA portal, this one with a photo attachment. The subject line said Violation Update. Non-compliance photographic evidence. I opened it. The photo showed my driveway approach from an angle that made it look like I had only cleared half the width, with a close-up insert of a small patch of slush near the curb. The email body said I had failed to meet the 40-foot standard and the incomplete remediation violation was now active, adding another $100 to the tab. I felt my jaw tighten. I grabbed my phone, turned on the video recording, and went back outside. Virginia was still on the sidewalk, now holding a clipboard and talking to another neighbor, an older woman with a salt bucket. I walked up and held my phone so the recording light was visible, but angled the screen away. Virginia, the city does not require sidewalk clearing, and I cleared everything the original email specified, I said. She turned to me with a tight smile. The city does not, but the HOA does, and you agreed to follow HOA rules when you bought here, she said. I asked where the 40-foot rule was written. She tapped the clipboard. It is in the emergency policy, section 3, subsection B, she said. I pulled out my phone with my other hand and opened the PDF I had downloaded. I scrolled through. Section 3 was about slip hazards, and subsection B said residents must maintain safe egress from their property to the public way. Nothing about 40 feet. I showed her the screen. She glanced at it and waved her hand. You are reading an old version, she said. The board amended it this morning, before posting. I felt a cold knot in my stomach. That is not how amendments work, I said. You cannot change a rule retroactively and fine me for the new version when I complied with the old one. She wrote something on her clipboard. Keep arguing. You are making my case for me, she said again, her voice syrupy. The other neighbor looked uncomfortable and walked away. Virginia stepped closer. You know what your problem is, she said quietly. You think you are special. You think the rules do not apply because you work nights and have a complicated schedule. But everyone here has to follow the same rules, and I am the record's custodian. I make sure the rules are followed. I stayed calm because I had one piece of proof that would end the whole game. My neighbor 2 doors down, an older man named Ed, had been outside during the original email time and had taken photos of every driveway on the block for insurance purposes after a plow contractor damaged his mailbox last year. He was meticulous, timestamp and GPS metadata on every shot. I had texted him an hour ago and he said he would send me the photos. If the board had really voted last night and sent the email this morning, then Ed's photos would show nobody had shoveled yet, and Virginia was selectively enforcing. I needed that packet before the next board meeting. I went back inside and checked my email. Ed had sent a zip file with a note. Good luck, these people are out of control. I downloaded the file and opened it. 32 photos, all taken between 6 and 7 in the morning, showing every driveway in our section of Icefall Landing covered in snow. The metadata confirmed the timestamps and location. I saved the file to 3 places: my laptop, a thumb drive, and a cloud backup. Then I opened the HOA portal and looked up the complaint log. There were 6 entries in the past week, all written in the same clipped bureaucratic style, all targeting properties where I knew the owners had young kids or variable work schedules. I recognized Virginia's phrasing in every one. The snow kept falling. By mid-morning, it was almost 4 inches, heavy and wet. I checked the weather report. The storm was supposed to last until evening, then clear overnight with temperatures dropping into the teens. The local news was calling it a historic storm for the Gulf Coast, with ice warnings and road closures. My ex texted me asking if the roads were safe. I told her I would keep her updated and we could reschedule if needed, but I really wanted to see our daughter this weekend. She sent back a thumbs up emoji. Around 10, I heard an engine outside. I looked out the window and saw a pickup truck with a plow blade attached, creeping down the street. It was not a city truck. The door had a magnetic sign with a logo I did not recognize. The driver was scraping the street in rough passes, pushing slush onto the curbs and driveways. When he reached my house, he angled the blade and shoved a thick ridge of slush across the bottom of my driveway, right where I had just cleared. I ran outside. "Hey," I yelled, "I just shoveled that." The driver stopped and leaned out the window. "HOA contracted me to clear the streets," he said. "I am just doing my job." I asked who authorized it. He shrugged. "Lady with a clipboard," he said, and drove on. I stared at the fresh ridge of slush blocking my driveway. It was almost a foot deep, packed and icy from the plow blade. I grabbed my shovel and started clearing it again. My back was already sore from the first round. Halfway through, Virginia appeared at the curb with her clipboard. "The plow contractor confirmed your driveway created a drainage obstruction," she said. "I am adding a third violation for impeding snow removal operations." I stopped shoveling and looked at her. "You hired the plow," I said. She smiled. "The HOA hired the plow to ensure safe streets, and you created an obstruction by not clearing your approach to the full standard," she said. "That is a separate violation under the emergency policy, Section 4. I felt my temper rising, but kept my voice steady. "Virginia, this is insane," I said. "You sent a plow to wreck my driveway after I already cleared it, and now you are fining me for the mess the plow made." She wrote on her clipboard. "I am documenting your hostile tone," she said. "This will be included in the enforcement file as evidence of non-cooperation." I wanted to throw the shovel, but I knew she was baiting me. I finished clearing the slush, went inside, and called Marcus again. He was in the field but texted back, "Document everything, get photos, and file a formal complaint with the board. If they fine you, request a hearing in writing." I spent the next hour photographing the driveway, the plow damage, and the orange reflective marker Virginia had left at my curb. I took wide shots, close-ups, and a short video walking the length of my property showing the cleared approach and the fresh plow ridge. Then I drafted a formal complaint to the board, citing the selective enforcement, the retroactive rule change, and the plow contractor creating the very obstruction they were fining me for. I attached Ed's photos and my own documentation. I submitted it through the HOA portal and CC'd the management company. The system sent back an auto reply, "Your complaint has been received and will be reviewed within 10 business days. 10 business days. The fine clock was running daily. I did the math. If they did not respond for 2 weeks, I would be over $1,000 in the hole. And the policy said they could file a lien after 72 hours. I needed to escalate faster. I called the management company directly and got a voicemail. I left a message explaining the situation and asking for an emergency board contact. No callback. I tried the HOA president, a retired engineer named Bill, whose number was listed on the portal. He answered on the 4th ring. "Bill, this is your neighbor from Maple Court," I said. "I need to talk about the winter enforcement policy." He sighed. "I figured someone would call," he said. "Look, Virginia pushed that policy through last night at an emergency meeting. 3 of us were not even there because of the weather warning. She said it was urgent and we needed to act fast. I asked if the vote was valid without a quorum." He paused. "I do not know," he said. "Virginia handles the minutes and the rules stuff. I just sign off on budgets." I felt a spark of hope. If the vote was invalid, the whole policy was unenforceable. I asked Bill if he could send me the minutes from the meeting. He hesitated. "You would have to request those from Virginia," he said. "She is the record's custodian." I explained that Virginia was the one fining me, and I did not trust her to provide unaltered records. Bill sighed again. "I will see what I can do," he said, and hung up. I checked the HOA bylaws on the portal. Quorum for an emergency meeting was 4 board members. The board had 7 seats. If only 3 were present, the vote was invalid. The snow finally stopped around noon. The temperature started dropping fast. I checked my driveway again. Clear. No ice. No obstructions. I took more photos with timestamps. My ex texted that she was leaving with our daughter, estimated arrival in an hour if the roads stayed clear. I warned her about the gate and said I would meet her at the entrance if needed. She sent back a heart emoji. I felt the time pressure building. If the gate froze and we got locked out, I would miss the weekend visit, and my custody schedule was already fragile after a rough mediation last year. At 12:30, my phone buzzed with another HOA email. The subject line said line notification. Final warning before enforcement action. I opened it. The email claimed I now owed $850, $200 for the original shoveling violation, $100 for incomplete remediation, $150 for the plow obstruction, $200 in late fees, and another $200 labeled winter enforcement surcharge. The surcharge was not in the emergency policy I had downloaded. The email said I had until 5 p.m. to pay via the portal, or the board would authorize a lien filing with bogus legal fees attached. I felt my chest tighten. This was not enforcement. This was extortion. I called Marcus. He did not answer. I called the management company again. Still voicemail. I called Bill. No answer. I was alone, and the clock was ticking. I made a decision. I grabbed my laptop, my thumb drive, and printed copies of everything. Ed's photos, the metadata, the original emergency policy PDF, my complaint, and the email chain showing the escalating fines. I put it all in a folder and drove to the county courthouse. The roads were slushy but passable. I parked and went inside to the clerk's office. I explained that I needed to file a formal dispute against an HOA lien threat and request an injunction. The clerk, a tired-looking woman with glasses, listened and handed me a form. "You need to fill this out and pay a filing fee," she said. "If the HOA files the lien, you can challenge it, but we cannot stop them preemptively unless you get a judge to issue a temporary restraining order, and that requires a hearing." "How long?" I asked. She shrugged. "Depends on the judge's calendar. Could be a week or 2. I did not have a week. I filled out the form, paid the fee, and left a copy of my documentation with the clerk. She stamped it and handed me a receipt. "If they file, come back with this and we will flag it," she said. I thanked her and drove back to Icefall Landing. The gate was working. I parked in my driveway and checked the time. Almost 2. My ex was supposed to arrive any minute. I stood on the porch and watched the street. A few neighbors were outside shoveling, moving slowly in the cold. Nobody looked at me. I wondered if Virginia had sent them the same violation emails or if I was the only target. At 2:15, my ex's car pulled up to the curb. My daughter jumped out, bundled in a pink coat and boots, her backpack bouncing. "Daddy," she yelled, running through the slush. I scooped her up and hugged her tight. My ex waved from the driver's seat. "Call if you need anything," she said, and drove off. I carried my daughter inside and helped her out of her wet coat. She was excited about the snow, asking if we could build a snowman later. I said yes, as long as the HOA does not fine me for it, and she laughed, not understanding the joke. We spent the afternoon inside. I made hot chocolate and we watched a movie. I kept checking my phone. No response from Marcus, no callback from the management company, no word from Bill. At 4:30, my phone buzzed. It was a group text in the neighborhood chat sent by Virginia. The message said, "Reminder, All residents must clear driveways and sidewalks to HOA standards before 6 p.m. or fines will increase. Photo evidence is being collected. Attached were 3 photos, all cropped tight to show small patches of slush on different properties. One of the photos was mine, cropped to hide the fact that my driveway was otherwise clear. If you are enjoying this chaos, hit like and subscribe for more HOA nightmare stories. I felt a wave of anger. She was using cropped screenshots to manipulate the narrative, and the group chat was believing it. Within minutes, replies started coming in. One neighbor said she had shoveled twice already and did not know what else Virginia wanted. Another said the emergency policy was unclear and asked for clarification. A third said Virginia was doing a great job keeping everyone safe and we should all cooperate. I wanted to reply with the full uncropped photos and the metadata, but I knew it would turn into a fight in the chat and make me look defensive. I needed a better venue. At 5, I got another email. This one was from the HOA attorney, a name I did not recognize, with a subject line, Demand Letter RE, Unpaid Fines and Line Authorize at Yon. I opened it with shaking hands. The letter claimed I owed $1,200 now, with an additional $300 in legal fees and administrative costs. It said the board had voted to authorize lien filing, and I had 72 hours to pay in full, or the lien would be recorded with the county. The letter was signed by someone named Roger Whitfield, attorney at law, with a Houston address. I looked him up online. His website said he specialized in HOA covenant enforcement and collections. I felt sick. I called Marcus one more time. He finally answered. Man, I have been in meetings all day. What is going on? He asked. I gave him the full update, the cropped photos, the lien threat, the attorney letter, the invalid quorum. He swore under his breath. This is bad, he said. If they file the lien, it goes on your property record and kills your credit. You need to fight this now, not later. I asked what I should do. He thought for a moment. File a complaint with the city about the plow contractor damaging your property, he said. That creates a paper trail showing the HOA's vendor caused the problem. Then request a formal hearing with the board and bring all your evidence. If they refuse, you have grounds to sue. And call that attorney back and tell him you are disputing the fines and any lien filing will be challenged in court. Sometimes that is enough to make them back off. I thanked him and hung up. I called the city non-emergency line and filed a complaint about the plow damage. The operator took my information and said a code officer would follow up within a few days. Then I called the attorney's office. I got a secretary. I explained I was disputing the fines and would challenge any lien filing. She put me on hold. A minute later, Roger Whitfield came on the line. Sir, the HOA has provided documentation of multiple violations and your refusal to comply, he said. If you do not pay, I am authorized to proceed with the lien. I told him the violations were based on a policy passed without a valid quorum, and I had photographic evidence proving selective enforcement. He paused. I will need to review that with the board, he said. Send me your documentation by email tonight, and I will get back to you tomorrow. I said I would, and hung up. I scanned everything and emailed it to Whitfield, CCing the management company bill and the full board distribution list I found on the portal. Then I wrote a cover email summarizing the facts: no valid quorum, no sidewalk clearing requirement under city code, plow contractor damage, and selective enforcement. I attached Ed's photos, my photos, the metadata, and the complaint I had filed earlier. I hit send and felt a tiny bit of relief. At least now there was a record. The temperature kept dropping. By evening it was in the low 20s, and everything outside was freezing solid. I bundled up my daughter and we went outside to build a snowman. The snow was too icy to pack well, but we managed a lumpy little guy with stick arms and a carrot nose. She loved it. We took pictures and went back inside. I made dinner and tried to act normal, but my mind was racing. The hearing, the lien, the attorney, the invalid vote, everything was tangled up, and I did not know which thread to pull first. At 8, my phone buzzed. It was Bill. "I just read your email," he said. I had no idea Virginia was pushing this so hard. I talked to 2 other board members, and we agreed the emergency meeting was not valid. We did not have quorum. I felt a surge of hope. "So the policy is void?" I asked. He hesitated. "Technically, yes, but Virginia is saying we can ratify it retroactively at the next regular meeting," he said. I asked when that was. "Next Thursday," he said. I did the math. That was 6 days away. The lien deadline was 3 days. "Bill, they are going to file the lien before the meeting," I said. "You need to stop this now." He sighed. "I will try," he said. "I am going to call an emergency meeting for tomorrow night and force a vote to rescind the fines. If we get 4 votes, it is done. Can you come?" he asked. I said yes. I put my daughter to bed and spent the rest of the night prepping for the meeting. I printed extra copies of everything, organized it into a binder, and rehearsed what I would say. I was not good at public speaking, but I needed to be clear and calm. I could not let Virginia bait me into looking angry or unreasonable. Around midnight, I got a text from Ed, my neighbor with the photos. He said he had gotten the same violation email and the same lien threat, and 3 other neighbors had too. Virginia was targeting everyone with variable schedules or young kids, using the winter policy as cover. He asked if I wanted to coordinate. I said yes, let us meet before the board meeting tomorrow and go in together. The next morning, I woke up early and checked the driveway. Still clear, no new snow. The temperature was in the teens and everything was frozen. I bundled up and went outside to check the orange reflective marker Virginia had planted at my curb. It was still there, frozen into the slush. I pulled it out and brought it inside. It was a standard road marker, the kind you buy at a hardware store, with no HOA markings. I took photos of it from every angle and added them to my binder. If Virginia claimed it was an official enforcement prop, I wanted proof it was just a generic marker she planted for effect. At 10, I met Ed and 2 other neighbors, a young couple named Sam and Lisa, at the coffee shop outside Icefall Landing. We compared notes. All 4 of us had gotten the same escalating fines, the same lien threat, and the same cropped photos in the group chat. Sam, an IT guy who worked from home, had pulled the metadata from the group chat photos and confirmed they were cropped and taken out of context. Lisa, a nurse with rotating shifts, had filed a complaint with the management company and gotten the same 10 business day auto reply. We agreed to present together at the meeting and ask the board to rescind all the fines and void the emergency policy. At 6 p.m., we arrived at the community center for the emergency meeting. The room was packed. At least 30 residents were there, most looking confused or angry. Virginia sat at the front table with Bill and 2 other board members. She had a stack of folders in front of her and her clipboard. When she saw me walk in with Ed, Sam, and Lisa, her expression tightened. Bill called the meeting to order and explained that the emergency winter policy had been challenged and the board needed to vote on whether to rescind the fines and void the policy. Virginia immediately objected. This policy was passed legally and is necessary to protect property values and safety, she said. If we rescind it, we are opening the HOA to liability. Bill asked if anyone wanted to speak. I stood up. I kept my voice steady and walked through the facts. No valid quorum at the original meeting, no city ordinance requiring sidewalk clearing, plow contractor damage caused by the HOA's own vendor, and selective enforcement targeting specific residents. I held up the binder and offered to share copies. Several residents nodded. Virginia stood up and pointed at me. "He is lying," she said. "The meeting had a valid quorum, the policy is clear, and he refused to comply multiple times." She held up her phone. "I have photo evidence and timestamps proving he created a hazard." I asked her to share the photos. She hesitated. These are part of the enforcement file and are confidential, she said. Bill frowned. Virginia, if you are using photos to justify fines, residents have a right to see them, he said. She glared at him, but pulled up her phone and projected the photos onto the screen. They were the same cropped shots from the group chat. I stood up and held up my phone. Here are the uncropped versions, showing my driveway was clear and the only obstruction was caused by the HOA's plow contractor, I said. I projected my photos. The room went silent. Several residents pulled out their phones and started comparing. Someone in the back said, "She did the same thing to me." Another said, "I got fined for slush the plow pushed onto my driveway." Virginia stood up and raised her voice. "This is a coordinated attack on the board," she said. "You are trying to undermine enforcement and put everyone at risk." I stayed calm. "Virginia, I am not attacking anyone," I said. "I am asking the board to follow its own rules and stop fining residents for violations that do not exist." Bill cleared his throat. "I move to rescind all fines issued under the emergency winter policy and void the policy pending a proper vote at the next regular meeting," he said. One board member seconded. Virginia objected again, but Bill called for a vote. 4 hands went up. The motion passed. I felt a wave of relief. The fines were gone. The lien threat was gone. Virginia stood up and grabbed her clipboard. "This is not over," she said, and walked out. The room broke into scattered applause. Bill adjourned the meeting, and several residents came up to thank me. Ed clapped me on the shoulder. "You did it," he said. I smiled, but I knew Virginia was not going to let it go. She had just been humiliated in front of the entire neighborhood, and people like her do not forget that. The next morning, I got an email from Roger Whitfield, the HOA attorney. The subject line said, "Notice OF with H drywall all." The email was brief. "After reviewing the board's vote last night, I am withdrawing from representation of the Icefall Landing HOA board in this matter. All fines and lien threats are void. Please direct any further questions to the board president." I forwarded the email to Marcus with a thank you note. He replied with a fist bump emoji. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, I got a call from Bill. "We have a problem," he said. "Virginia submitted a resignation from the board, but she also filed a complaint with the management company claiming you harassed her and created a hostile environment. The management company is asking for a formal response." I felt my stomach drop. "What kind of response?" I asked. Bill sighed. "They want a written statement from you explaining your conduct at the meeting, and they want witness statements from other residents. If they find merit, they can refer it to the county for mediation or take it to civil court." I asked if this was standard. He paused. "No," he said. "This feels like retaliation." I called Marcus. He agreed it was retaliation and told me to document everything and get witness statements from Ed, Sam, and Lisa. I spent the next day drafting a response and collecting statements. All 3 neighbors confirmed I had been calm and factual at the meeting, and they had seen Virginia escalate and walk out. I submitted everything to the management company and waited. A week later, I got a reply. "After reviewing the evidence, we find no merit in the harassment complaint. The matter is closed." But Virginia was not done. She started showing up at my curb again, now with a flashlight and a tape measure, inspecting my property line and taking notes. She never spoke to me, just measured and photographed and left. One evening, she planted another orange reflective marker at the edge of my driveway, right on the property line. I pulled it out and brought it inside. The next morning, there were 2 more. I collected those too. It became a weird silent war. She would plant markers, I would remove them, and neither of us said a word. Then, 3 weeks after the board meeting, I got a call from a city inspector. He said he was following up on my plow damage complaint and wanted to schedule a site visit. I agreed, and he came out the next day. He was a middle-aged guy with a clipboard and a camera. He inspected my driveway, took measurements, and reviewed the photos I had submitted. The plow contractor damaged your curb and created a drainage issue, he said. That is a code violation. I asked who was responsible. He checked his notes. The HOA contracted the plow, so they are liable, he said. I am issuing a notice to the management company requiring them to repair the damage within 30 days or face fines. I felt a flicker of satisfaction. The city inspector was confirming what the HOA could not enforce, and now they were on the hook for the damage their own contractor caused. I thanked him, and he left. That afternoon, I got an email from the management company. The subject line said, "Repair Authorization request." The email said the HOA was authorizing a contractor to repair curb damage on my property and asked me to confirm access. I replied confirming access and asking for a timeline. They said 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, the contractor showed up and fixed the curb. It took them half a day. When they left, my driveway looked better than it had before the storm. I took photos and sent them to Marcus. He replied, "Justice." I smiled. It felt good. But the real payoff came a month later. I got a notice from the management company that the HOA board was holding a special meeting to address financial discrepancies in the winter enforcement account. Attached was a spreadsheet showing the fines Virginia had collected, the vendor payments for the plow contractor, and a gap of almost $3,000 that could not be accounted for. The meeting was open to all homeowners. I marked my calendar. The night of the meeting, the community center was packed again. Bill called the meeting to order and explained that an audit had revealed missing funds from the winter enforcement account. Virginia had been responsible for collecting fines and paying vendors, and the ledger did not match the bank statements. He asked Virginia to explain. She was not there. Bill said she had resigned from the board and refused to cooperate with the audit. The room erupted. Residents started shouting questions. Where is the money? Who authorized the payments? Why was not this caught earlier? Bill raised his hand for quiet. We have contacted the county district attorney and filed a report, he said. The investigation is ongoing. In the meantime, we are voiding all ledger entries related to the winter enforcement policy and refunding any fines that were paid. The HOA attorney has withdrawn, and we are looking for new legal counsel. I felt a surge of vindication. Virginia had been using fake winter violations to cover missing HOA money, and the ledger proved it. After the meeting, Ed pulled me aside. You called it, he said. She was never about the rules. It was always about the money. I nodded. I thought back to the way she had escalated so fast, the invented surcharges, the bogus legal fees. It all made sense now. She had been running a scam, and the winter storm gave her cover to ramp it up. But she got greedy, targeted too many people, and the whole thing collapsed. A few weeks later, I got a letter from the county district attorney's office. It said Virginia Turner had been charged with theft and fraud related to the HOA funds, and the case was moving forward. I was listed as a witness. I called Marcus and told him. He laughed. Man, you took down a whole HOA scam, he said. I am buying you a beer. I said I would take him up on that. The final piece came in the spring. The HOA held elections, and Bill was re-elected president. He appointed a new treasurer and hired an independent auditor to review the books. The audit found another $5,000 missing over the past 2 years, all tied to Virginia's enforcement actions and vendor payments. The board voted to pursue civil recovery and filed a lawsuit against Virginia. I never heard how it ended, but I did not care. The harassment was over, the fines were void, and my custody schedule was safe. Looking back, the craziest part was not the snow or the fines or even the missing money. It was how fast it escalated and how close I came to losing everything over a few inches of slush. If I had not documented everything, if I had not had Ed's photos and Marcus's advice, if I had not pushed back at that board meeting, Virginia would have filed the lien and I would have been buried in legal fees and credit damage. But I stayed calm, followed the process, and let her own actions hang her. One night, a few months later, I was outside with my daughter building another snowman during a surprise late-season flurry. She asked if the HOA lady was going to yell at us again. I smiled and said no, she is gone, and we do not have to worry about her anymore. My daughter nodded and went back to packing snow. I stood there in the cold, watching her work, and felt something close to peace. The neighborhood was quiet. The gate was working. The curb was fixed. And the orange reflective markers were long gone, buried in a box in my garage as a reminder of how close we came to disaster. I hope your week goes smoothly.